Welcome, everybody, to the Course Consultant Show. I'm here with a very special guest, Erin Perkins, and I'm so excited today to talk about this subject. Erin Perkins is a deaf entrepreneur, disabled rights activist, and accessibility educator dedicated to making business world more inclusive. Her fierce advocacy comes from her life experiences as a deaf woman and owner of a small online business, Mabely Q. You can find Erin online at mabelyq.com. Erin, thank you so much for meeting with me today. I'm so excited to dive into this topic.
Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to only talk about this topic every time.
Yeah, so I actually found out about your services in a different Facebook group. And one reason why I wanted to bring you on is so that number one, I can learn how to become a better advocate for being inclusive in my online business, but also because many people who are learning the same types of things to become more inclusive don't really know where to start. So I would love for you to share how exactly can course creators and online business owners become more inclusive in the work that they do?
I think this is like a really broad subject, but because like inclusivity, a lot of people, when they think about inclusivity, you're thinking about race, gender, and religion, that kind of stuff. But what really falls to the bottom of this is people with disability. And that's like really interesting because the statistics of people with disability owning their own business is actually higher than people without disability. Because a lot of time people with disability find that the regular 9 to 5 jobs are not that accommodating. Although during the pandemic, it has been way more being like, oh yeah, everyone can work from home now. And that's like what a lot of people with disabilities have been fighting for, like having like flexible work hours and stuff like that. So as small business owners, we all have to realize that not everyone shares out their disability. I share it out because that's like part of my story, but it's not necessarily part of everyone's story. So as a course creator, you're not necessarily thinking about, oh, what people have disabilities, how can I accommodate them? You want to like create an experience that it doesn't matter whether they have a disability or not, that one can take your course with ease without having to be like, hey, so I want to check is this course caption, which I have to do every single time because it's not the norm. And so that's like one of the things that I've noticed. Captioning should always be the norm, but it's unfortunately it's not because most people don't realize that. And then it's just really thinking about how you're creating your course. Because in video, necessarily the best way to go about it. Like I know one course that I take, the video, it's all like PDFs and stuff, but that like really works for how her course is designed. So it really makes sense. So my encouragement is to think like, how can I create this course that includes as many people as possible? Not like, how do I make this work for these people? You want to like create something that creates a that includes more people rather than excludes people.
Mm. Yes. And I think captioning is definitely something that people who are creating online courses might think about, but might not know what tools to use. So, in one of my courses, I actually have a video tutorial on how to caption your videos using Screencast-O-Matic. But I know that you know and have been featured in other online media publications like Honeybook, sharing some very common tools that online business owners can use for free or for a low cost. So, what other software can online business owners use to caption their videos or other types of content?
So one of my favorite tools is Otter.ai. Like it's super low cost. It does require you to edit some, but I feel like it's gotten a lot smarter that is starting to pick up people's voices better and it's adjusted to it. So Otter is definitely, I mean, it's $9.99 for the paid version. You get the SRT file, but I noticed like with one of my clients, when we had the SRT file and we uploaded it to one of the course platform, it wasn't exactly like lining up and stuff. I also like to use subtitle and as in Debra. I have like code that I can share with you guys. Subtitle only allows for 20-minute videos to be captioned and it's burned in caption. There are two different ways to it. There's burned in caption, which is great because then everybody sees the caption. You can like no one does not have caption. However, with it's not screen reader accessible, that's like one of the things. But I can't imagine if you're using a screen reader, you also hearing it. So if the video has audio already, it shouldn't be like that big of a deal. And those two are my personal favorite. But I know a lot of people like Descript, which is like a really good platform. Like most of these do have really easy learning curve that they're not like so daunting that if I've been able to figure it out, I think anybody can figure it out because I'm tech savvy, but with video, I am not tech savvy like at all. So that's like one of the things that I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta like do it. And I want to highlight that me captioning my videos as a deaf person takes me 10 times long as a hearing person. So if I can do it, you can definitely do it too.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear and learn from you about SRT files because I use otter.ai to transcribe my blog or to transcribe my podcast episodes, but I don't know what to do with an SRT file, nor have I actually ever used an SRT file. Normally, when I caption videos, I do it in an all-in-one video platform. I never really use the SRT file. So, how would someone use an SRT file to actually include in a video if they wanted to maybe post a video on YouTube or caption another video on their website, which is hosted through Vimeo or something like that?
Yeah. So YouTube, and I haven't used Vimeo myself personally, but YouTube, I know when you go in the back end, you can upload your SRT file in there and it'll like line up everything for you. So that like makes it easier. And then say you've already pre-recorded your videos, and so you can run the audio through Otter, download the SRT file. You do have to have a paid version of Otter to do this. And when you do download the SRT file, you can easily upload the SRT file into whatever teaching platform. I know Thinkific and Teachable both allow you to upload the SRT file. I have found that somebody else had used Kajabi and they require some other weird file format. So that is definitely a challenge in finding the different platforms. They're not all using the same thing. And I can understand the frustration with people like, oh my God, somebody told me to use the SRT file, which is that's the level I know. But like, I don't use Kajabi, so I don't know how that platform works. So I have to like research it. And even when you reach out to the platform, they're like, what are you talking about? And it's like, oh my gosh, it does, I know, and does cause people a lot of frustration. That's why I ended up using subtitle, because I was like, I want to control the caption on my end and be able to just upload the video and it'll be all there.
Yeah. And I also think that, with the different platforms, I actually just got an email from Thinkific saying, or no, I can't remember if it was YouTube. I got an email from one of the bigger companies and they said, here is some things you can use to make your videos accessible for captions. And I think that captions in general, it's also really good as a business owner to use them because people don't always have sound on. That even if they are hearing, they might pass through, they're not listening to it, they are just scrolling, especially on social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and now I'm not on TikTok really, but on TikTok, there are some captions. And I think it's helpful for me as a consumer of content, as well as the creator of content, to think about ways that I can become more visible, to get my message out there, as well as help support my audience to learn. And I love that you've mentioned all of these different software tools, and I'm going to make sure I include that in my recap. So let me ask you this. What is your course about? How have you been helping other people learn more about this topic?
So my course is called Accessibility Made Easy. And it was funny because I wanted to name it completely something else. Then I surveyed the audience and they were like, accessibility made easy. And I mean, it's like crystal clear. Because the biggest problem with accessibility was, what the heck does it mean? And oh my God, it is so complicated. Like even as I started doing the research, I was like, this feels so dry. This is so hard. I'm trying to figure out all the different rules, the legal, and most of the stuff that's found on the web is about physical, like in-person aspect where you have to deal with architecture, engineering, all of that. You know, you have the elevator, the door button, you have the curb cut that like the wheelchair can access. We have that aspect. And then we have website. Problem is, not everything is just websites anymore. Our businesses are now so far beyond just websites. So I was like, I need to teach more than just this. And learning website accessibility is like probably a 2-3 year thing because there's so much detail in it that it's very complex that I was like, if I don't want to do this, what makes me think that any other business owner is going to want to do this? So like I started really doing the research on like, oh, how do we make things a little easier for the business owner without feeling like that they're going to have to spend $15,000 in order to make sure the business is accessible. So my goal with this course was to teach people through, you know, transcript. What do you do with this transcript? Your design, like your brand design. I'm not telling you to change your brand, but is your brand accessible in terms of the visual design, like the color, the contrast, and stuff like that? How do you make tweaks if you already have a brand and just add to it and just make it a little better? I talk about social media. Social media is a huge thing. How are you accessible on that? Because I guarantee you, nobody is finding you through just your website. They're finding you through social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, those platforms. And if you're not accessible on there, what makes you think they're gonna feel like they want to reach out to you on your website? So those are the different things that I cover in my course, and everything is less than 5 minutes long. And I basically just kind of walk you through how to do things. I show you different tools and resources from free to high end, depending on time and money, where you're at in that. And I have been adding little by little new things to it as technology evolves really quickly. So because like technology has, I mean, like Zoom last August did not have live captioning. And now as of January 2021, they have live captioning, which is awesome. So there's little things that have like improved. So it's really just like teaching people how to do the little things without feeling super overwhelmed.
Yeah, it is a lot. And I feel like when I have talked to other creators and small business owners, I think there's a genuine desire to do things that will be available to any person who's out there. But I think what the challenge and the obstacle has been in the past, but I know it is improving, is that number one, it's very time consuming.
Yeah.
I hear that very frequently. I don't have time to put in the ability to create captions that are burned in. I'm only one solo entrepreneur, or I don't know if that's what my audience needs. So why invest the time? So I find that, you know, as me, who is someone who is a solo entrepreneur, someone who does have the desire, I think that there are people out there like you who have amazing resources where I could make sure that I go through the information, apply the resources that you've provided in your course. And I think that anyone who is interested in this topic should look at what you have, because you have a lot of great free content on your website. So let me ask you this. When it comes to content creation, not just paid courses or programs, which of course we were talked about today, what can someone do to really start thinking about this when they're planning out their content? How can we, as digital marketers, as people who have online business owners, really start thinking about it, not just as an afterthought, but really in the entire course and or content creation process?
I think the biggest thing is like I know a lot of people already have their workflow built out. So it's like, the thing that I teach in my course are like, where can you interweave this into your process? And I encourage them to start from now. Like, don't feel like you have to start from when you started your business. Say, like, this podcast is going to be your first podcast that you start transcribing. And from this point on, you're going to start doing all of them at this point. And you're going to do it well. And then once you master that, then you can start backtracking and add that in to your process to like that. Because like if you start from the very beginning, you're gonna get overwhelmed and then you're not gonna do it. And I know that, we all know that. So don't feel the pressure of like, oh my gosh, I gotta go through past 80 episodes that I've recorded. Like, yeah, of course, you're not gonna get that done. But like I ask every podcast that I'm on that if anything, start with mine from this point on. Like that's all, that's the least I can ask for. And then like for creating content in general, it's really about making sure that everything is readable in the sense of whether the computer, like the screen reader can read it, or a deaf person can read it. Because like really they're kind of like the people that are on the blind aspect, like they might not be fully blind, but they use a screen reader that read the text for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they can pick it up. A deaf person will just read it. You have to have a mom, they will read it because they're trying to like keep their baby sleeping, so they're reading. But I feel like everything needs to have some form of readable content.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have an audio podcast that you placed on Instagram, make sure there are captions with that, or that kind of thing. That way it's all readable text, and that includes like alt text. Like if you have a graphic with like embedded like text in there, you want to make sure you add the alt text in there. I totally get it. You're probably like listening to the podcast and like, oh my God, that's so overwhelming. But the fact is everything is readable in that sense.
Mm-hmm. So I think you bring up a good point with just having readable content in general. And that's one reason why I like to tell people to create text-based lessons as well as their videos. I had someone mention to me that some of my content was repetitive because I had a video, I had a text-based lesson, I had a downloadable sheet. But the reality is that people consume content in different ways, and not everyone learns the best with one type of content. Some people might prefer reading, some people might prefer videos. I do have one thing that I really want to ask you. I would love to hear your feedback on this. I know that recently in 2021 and closer to the end of 2020, these audio only platforms have really started to take. She's like, don't get me started. I can see your face. So, I want to know with these audio only platforms and the up and coming platforms. And by audio only, I'm referring to places like Clubhouse. We have other audio platforms coming out new, like Twitter Spaces. And we also have Facebook is coming out with their new audio platform. I know that there has been a lot of frustration from what I hear from communities that are not able to hear audio only. And with unfortunately platforms like Clubhouse, I've heard other people say they really don't appreciate feeling left out of the literally left out of the conversation. So last week I had a summit and I tried to make sure that I was broadcasting on multiple locations outside of Clubhouse, but I did incorporate some in Clubhouse. What I want to know from me, and I'm not going to ask you for a custom solution, but for people like me who do want to create content, who do want to be able to provide information, what are your thoughts on audio only platforms and using that as a way to also transcribe or share within the confined abilities of whatever platform we're using? How can audio only become something that we can repurpose and
Mhm.
also make accessible for other people who aren't able to listen in?
So the fact is, radio podcast have always been audio based, and that is the one thing. Is like I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, deaf people, they don't need to be part of it. But the thing is, we already missed out on so much stuff just by the fact that we're deaf. Like I feel like one of my weaknesses is my vocabulary. My vocabulary is not as rich as a hearing person vocabulary is, because I'm not able to pick up things from just like random conversations, that I'm not hearing the different vocabulary languages that people use. So that's like one that frustrates me. So with podcast is like just transcribe the thing. I want to share a story. So we had a blogger. The blog world was really amazing for me because I could literally be like 100% involved. Everything was great. And then the blog world started changing. They were doing more video. Like some of them started bringing in podcasts, and there was one blogger, huge following. I've been following them for like over 10 years, and they decided just switch to podcast. And me and my friend were like, can you please transcribe? Like, oh, but it's so expensive. Hearing that to me felt like they were dismissing us, that we weren't valued enough in their community, that it was like incredibly frustrating that they couldn't take the time to transcribe their podcast. And even yet to this day, with transcription being way more affordable, and one of the comments that she made, I don't know why anyone would want to read the entire 1 hour of the podcast, because that's just not, to them, it was not fun. To me, 1 hour, I can finish reading that entire transcript in probably 15 minutes or less.
Mm.
So like I read fast, like I'm able to get, so like don't dismiss people by saying, oh God, I gotta give them a transcript, but you're not going to get the same experience. But there are ways that you can create the same experience through, like, like you will have to personalize the transcript a little bit more by saying, like, if you have music, you'll like put in those music breaks and stuff like that. But I read so much that to me it's like normal to me. Like I'm used to it, and definitely like making sure that you're different, making sure you're differentiating every who's speaking that needs to be clear on who's speaking throughout the transcript. I had someone that did invite me on to Clubhouse, and I'm like, this literally makes no sense to me. Because if I can't see people's faces, I cannot pick up who is talking. Like, it's very like confusing to me to just hear audio based only. I remember like when I was working at my old job and my boss wanted me to be on the phone, so I was connected to the relay, and I'm sitting there and I had people on my team talking. I literally could not tell the difference between who was sounding like who was who, because it was totally new to me, but man, people sound different on phone. Like, and I'm sure that's the same way in like radio, or like people just sound different in person and on phone. So it's really like personalize the transcript a little bit. And I think that goes a long way into really including people that can't or don't want to listen to audio-based podcast platform, that kind of stuff.
Mm. So that's a really good thought. And I want to say that when people are listening or reading the transcripts, because I'm going to add transcripts to this, I want to know with all of the things that are happening with audio and video primarily, I like that you talked about how important it is to create an experience that's for everyone. It's not just about, well, they don't get the same experience on text as they do on video. It is a experience.
Yeah.
And as you said, I found it interesting that you said you were able to get through the content quite quickly for an hour's worth of transcription. So for me, I probably wouldn't get through it that fast. It would probably take me a lot longer. So I found that is interesting. I have heard that a few people who are hard of hearing, and again, I know that there's levels, but they, from my conversations with other creators, they recommend that people actually say things such as, "This is Melody speaking,"
Mhm.
"I'm done speaking," and then another person, if they chime in, again, say who they are, remind the listener who is there. I think that it is frustrating with some of the things that Clubhouse has come out with their terms. There is a lot of conversation around their legal jargon, which really does not recommend people to use transcription services or to use recording unless it is something that's been agreed by all the speakers. And so it's a very gray area right now on Clubhouse. And I've heard that Facebook is coming out with a audio platform, but that they're hoping to, again, I don't know for sure from what I'm reading, they are hoping to have live transcriptions for these rooms, which I found interesting as well. So my hope, and I'm sure you know very much more about this subject, is that there will be more software and other types of tools to make it easier so that all of this stuff that we're doing now, while very helpful, will be something that will be innately available for everyone rather
Right.
than trying to do a lot of things manually. But for now, I think we're slowly moving towards some progress.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I feel like in just like literally a year or two, like things have changed really quickly. Like I'm seeing like things become more affordable and technology getting better. I mean, granted, the auto caption aren't like 100%, but they're still way better than what we have. But for the people that hear even less than me, that's not going to work. Like that's just not going to work. You're going to have to edit. And I do think like for those platforms where you introduce yourself where you're saying this is Erin speaking, like that does force people to kind of slow down and really think about what they want to say and forces people to listen as opposed to interrupt. Because that's like one of the things that I've learned as in one of my like personal growth is that we don't listen enough as human beings. We tend to be like, oh, but, and one of the things I've learned is to like, okay, take what the person is saying, really pay attention to them. And I think that process can actually improve people having a better dialogue, which is what we need more of these days, and being able to like just kind of take it in, think about it, and then go ahead and say what you want to say. And I think it would just create a much better experience for everybody.
Yeah, I definitely feel at times that I rush into conversations. I don't stop to think thoughtfully about what I'm going to say. And I think that is a skill that you have to develop to really say in your mind before you actually say something, think about it. And I remember when I was working in corporate, there was a training I went through, and the trainers would say this very frequently: are you listening just to respond, or are you really truly listening? And it wasn't really just hearing the words that people were saying. I think the point of that training was to really allow people to tune in to what is actually happening. And as someone who has actually worked in customer service, I know that sometimes things are happening that aren't always communicated in the words that we say. Sometimes there might be nuances, there can be emotions attached to things. There's sometimes deeper issues or considerations that need to be thought about. And really taking the time to deeply, truly listen and hear and empathize with the other person is a skill that I think all of us can really learn from.
I mean, that's what I feel like would be missing from these audio-based platforms, and you won't get in transcript if you're not able to necessarily pick up the tone. But
Mhm.
you can still translate that through writing. One of the things I do want to recommend is it what movie? I don't know if it's on Netflix or HBO. It's called The Sound of Metal.
Mm. Yeah, I think
And
it's on, I think it might be on Amazon Prime. Maybe.
maybe, yeah, Amazon Prime, yeah. So it's about the drummer that lost his hearing later in life. And it's really funny because like I can't 100% relate to it because I was born deaf. But like the experiences that they kind of reflect in the movie is like what I hope that hearing people can get out of it is how things, because the way they play things, that I would be like asking my husband, can you actually hear what he is saying word for word, or is it what the caption is saying? And
Mhm.
he's like, oh no, I can't understand. That's like how it sounds. I was like, oh, okay, because they're really trying to create this experience and what it is like for a deaf person, so a hearing person can kind of experience what we experience on a daily basis. So it's like one of the scenes that I really love is where they go into a party and then all the shit chatter, but everything sounds very like blurry to us. It's just like it all blends together. Wow, I feel like a hearing person has this capability to pick out sound. So like I think it's one of the most like really fascinating movie that like how it plays out. So but I can't like 100% relate to it because I'm deaf. I was born this way. So I don't know what it's like to be hearing.
Yeah, I'm reminded of my days back in theater where I actually read play scripts, and in the scripts a lot of the action and a lot of the quote sounds were written. So
Yeah.
for instance, in the scene it would describe the layout of the actual interior of the room. It would actually say so-and-so laughs character turns to her partner or whoever the character is and says, and so you can kind of read some of the tone of what's happening,
Mhm.
even if you can't hear it, even if you can't see it, it's still there in writing. And I think
Yes,
that that is a really, playwrights and script writers, we miss sometimes that now as
yes,
content creators, especially small business owners, because nuance and tone and describers do take extra time. And unfortunately, transcription services don't really capture that all the
yes.
way. So I'm hoping that, over time, I can become better skilled at this kinds of thing. And also that software catches up, which it seems like it slowly but surely is. So, Erin, I don't want to take too much of your time. You've shared a lot of great things today. So, is there anything that if someone really wanted to learn from you about this topic or wanted to maybe dive into your services, how could they find out more about you and what you do?
So you can follow me on Instagram at Mabely_Q. And you can go to my website, mabelyq.com. And like it is like 100% all about accessibility. There's 4 different ways that you can work with me. All of that clearly on my website. I've tried to make working with me as accessible as possible. Like whether you take the course, it's like you can do like 3 easy payments for a one-time payment. I've like tried to create this, as I know accessibility can end up feeling like it's so expensive. But my biggest tip is it's really progress over perfection. I don't want people to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to be perfect. But I guarantee you, I'm probably making mistakes myself as well.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'll make sure to include that in all of my notes and get links out for people who want to learn more about your service. So, thank you so much for coming on today's show. I'm very excited about giving this to my audience, and I can't wait to see what kinds of questions I get. And I'll be sure to reference you so that you can share all about what it is that you are doing with the world, which is so exciting.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.